Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today we are going to do another single card tarot study video. I still don't have a name for this series, even though I've made like 10 videos about it. But yes, we're looking at individual cards. I have a whole playlist, and today we are going to talk about the Seven of Swords. Now, I've already covered the Ten of Swords, for example. I've also done a separate video about the Suit of Swords as a whole. So I'm going to link both of that down below, including the list of all of the single card study videos I've made. And we're going to look very closely at the numerology of the card, how it fits into the suit and the narrative of the whole suit and the story of it. Then we're going to look at the symbolism, we're going to look at the elements in the card, and then we're going to look at the encouraging and the warning aspects of the card. Some people say positive and negative. I like to say warning elements and encouraging elements to make it a bit more smooth and not so black and white. So yes, let's talk about the Seven of Swords. So with the Seven of Swords, let's talk about the number 7 first of all. Let's talk about the numerology. If you've seen my numerology video, you're an expert on this already, but let me remind you. The 7 is one of the more complicated numbers because a lot of the suits have a different, very different meaning behind the 7s. You know, some of them have similar themes between the suits, and the 7s are all quite different, but what they have in common is that they are all about deepening your spiritual understanding, and it's about handling opportunities in reality. You've done some inner work. The 5 was sort of the catastrophe, the destruction of stability. Then the 6 is doing inner work, finding a new way to relate to yourself. And then the 7 is putting that into action, essentially, and relating to the world. So if you look at the 7 of Cups, for example, you have someone trying to make a decision. So it's about you, but at the same time, it's about the outside world, if you know what I mean. With the 7 of Wands, you have someone defending their position. It's them defending, and it's the outside world attacking. And with the 7 of Discs, you have someone who is seeing fruits becoming ripe, but they are impatient and they're like, the fruits are still not ripe. I've still not achieved my goal. So it's sort of about yourself, but also sort of about the outside world. There's probably better ways to put this, but it's sort of a difficult way to describe all throughout the suits to make it all match up for each suit. So it's sort of, how do you decide to relate to the outside world now that you have the knowledge that you have? That's what the 7s are about. And with the 7 of Swords, we have someone who's deciding to use their knowledge, to use their power, to use their insight to take a shortcut. And that brings us to the second part of the video. So let's talk about the narrative of the Suit of Swords and how the 7 fits into that. So with the 5 of Swords, we have this idea of clashing words or moralities, or just a clash of some sort, and then a separation. There's a winner and a loser in the 5 of Swords, and everyone has to sort of make sense of that. Did you win? Did you lose? How was your life changing? If you won, did you even really win? Because it looks like it was a war, and nobody wins in war. So yeah, that's sort of what the 5 is about. And then with the 6, you have this idea of moving on from that and entering a new chapter of your life. But with the 7, we sort of go back to this whole idea of war, because if you look at the card, you have war camps in the background, possibly, and someone stealing swords, stealing resources, weapons, essentially, from that camp. So we're sort of going back to the war idea with the 7 of Swords. And then if you look at the 8 of Swords, which comes after the 7 in the whole story, there you have limitation or perceived limitation and a problem of no power, no empowerment, no perceived power. And the 7 is sort of the opposite of that. It's the ultimate realization that you have power and that you can be on top if you take resources from other people and scam and lie, and it's up to you whether you want to do that. Of course, often it's also read in a different way where someone else is trying to take something from you, but I think a lot of the time we can't just externalize negative cards and say, oh, that's about another person. We also have to look at what does it say about us. And in the whole narrative of the suit, the Seven of Swords is the card of shortcuts. It's the card that's saying maybe you are not doing your due diligence, maybe you're not disciplined or working properly, but you are taking shortcuts that will cost you in the long run, as we see in the Eight of Swords, where this empowerment of I can take what I want is taken away and you are immobilized. So that's how it fits into the narrative. Now let's talk about the individual symbols in the card. First of all, we have the swords, of course. If you've watched my video all about the swords, then you know that they can stand for a lot of things. They can stand for individual words that were said to you or that you said to someone else. They can stand for opinions that you hold or that somebody else holds. They can stand for a whole ass conversation. They can stand for a conflict that you had with someone. They can also literally stand for your need to cut someone out of your life, or they can stand for someone else trying to cut you out of their life. The swords can also be information in a very general sense, getting informed in a very general sense. So the swords can be a lot of things, and that gives you the opportunity to really go deep into what the meaning of the cards is, of the card is in a spread. If you look at the cards around it, what do you think the swords actually mean? What do you think the swords stand for? Do they stand for single words that you said to someone else and hurt them with it? Or do they maybe stand for opinions that you hold that are outdated? All of that is possible. Now, the second symbol is obviously the person carrying the swords. Here we have someone who is looking back over their shoulder, which makes it quite obvious that they are stealing these swords and not just going on a fun little walk. Do note that he's holding the swords in a way that I wouldn't hold them personally. If I were to transport a lot of swords, I would not do it like that, because the person is holding them by the blade, which hurts if it's sharp. If it's that kind of sword. Maybe it's just a sword for stabbing, then it doesn't matter. But you catch my drift. They are not holding them in a way that is really empowering to them. They're holding them in a way that's like, they're mine. And if someone were to approach and attack them, they'd have to drop all of them and then pick one up by the hilt and be able to use it. So it's not very battle ready, let's say. So the person is quite suspicious. It's a suspicious symbol in this card because they're doing something very strange. They're stealing, they're looking over their shoulder, they're holding the swords wrong. It's not a prepared, smart action. It's sort of a speedy reaction to something, which I think is also important. This is one of the most moving people, like moving their feet. Not a lot of tarot cards actively move their feet. This person is. So it's a card of speedy movement as well, and of maybe making a quick decision or cautioning you not to make a decision that's too quick. But we'll talk about that later. Now, symbol-wise, we also have the tents in the background, which seem like war camp tents. So he probably went to the enemy camp and took a few swords from that. And in the Mucha Tarot, we also have a broken down tree. So we have this idea of disempowerment and not being rooted properly and not, properly developing like a tree develops, roots, leaves, growth. And that is not present. Instead, you're trying to take a shortcut, and that's not very fertile. That's not a good ground for success, to take shortcuts and to not do your due diligence. So that's basically all the symbols. We don't really have clouds here. We don't have water. Earth is always there, I guess. I mean, air is also there, but not clouds, no wind or something. So yeah, that's all the symbols we have. In the Mucha, we also have some red leaves, which sort of recalls this idea of blood, in my opinion, and maybe is a callback to war again. But that's not even in the Rider-Waite-Smith, so that's just flavor maybe added to the Mucha Tarot. So let's talk about the elements. I've already said just now that there's not a lot of elements going on here, not a lot of symbols from other suits. No water, no clouds, no wind storm. There's just the earth that the person is treading on, and obviously the swords that they're holding. So contrary to a lot of the other cards, we don't have a lot of elements going on here. It's a weird still picture, but the person is moving as well. So there's not a lot going on that is outside of the person. It's sort of, everything is quiet and they are just doing their thing, stealing stuff. So I can't say much about elements. Now let's talk about the warning and the encouraging aspects of the Seven of Swords. I've already mentioned this briefly. One of the warning elements is to not take too many shortcuts when you are trying to reach a goal, because due diligence is often needed. But on the other hand, it can also, depending on the context of the spread, encourage you to take shortcuts and encourage you to look for what you can simplify, how you can make things easier for yourself, without obviously stealing from other people. But still, it's sort of a nudge in the direction of, hey, you can take a shorter path and that's okay. So depending on the other cards in the spread and this card's position in the spread, it can either be a warning to take a shortcut or a warning not to take one. Also, it could warn or encourage you of fast decisions. Encourage you of, that makes no sense, but you know what I mean. It can encourage you to make a fast decision, or it can caution you to not decide too fast. As I explained in the whole symbolism and everything before, you can see that this decision was not thought through. The person is hurting themselves with the blades of the swords possibly, and doesn't have a proper plan, a proper strategy of doing this. It was just sort of like grab the swords and run. So yeah, more often than not, this is a warning not to make fast decisions, but I don't want to exclude that it can also mean that you have to now make a fast decision, even if it's maybe not an ideal basis. If you don't have an ideal basis for a fast decision, you might still need to take one. Whereas if you compare this to the Seven of Cups, that's more about take your time with decisions. You are right now kind of germinating within the whole indecision, and you have to wait. You have to see the options, weigh them out, rather than making a decision. With the Seven of Swords being, make a decision, do it. Now, of course, we also have the classical meaning of you are cheating someone or someone is cheating you. It can alert you to scamming, lying, betrayal, being used by someone, and also possibly being wrapped up in the words of someone else, because remember, the swords can also stand for literal words out of someone's mouth. Oops, just almost spilled my coffee. And those words can be the main part of your betrayal, the main part of the scam, the lies. Each sword is one lie. Sometimes it can be as literal as that. And it can also sort of be an image of revenge, If this card shows you that someone is betraying you, someone is cheating on you, someone is scamming you, then it's also showing you that this person is hurting themselves by doing that, because they are holding those blades, those swords by the blades, and hurting themselves. And so there's also this little pocket of revenge in there, of maybe it's time for some justice, that they hurt themselves with those swords. Remember, the Justice card also has a sword, so swords can sort of be anything. They can bring justice or they can bring injustice. That's what a weapon is. That sounds wrong. That sounds like I condone violence. But when I say sword, I mean something like cutting someone off, for example, or finding the right sharp words to tell someone, you can't do this with me. It's not working. This is the boundary. So what do you think of the Seven of Swords? Have you seen it a lot in your spreads? Do you like the card? Do you not like the card? Do you feel it's more often about you, or do you feel it's more often about others? Where it's like someone is scamming you, look out? Or is it like, hey, you're being dishonest with yourself? Something like that. Let me know. I would love to read your comments. I'm putting more videos in the description box, and subscribe if you like this, and I'll see you very, very soon. Thank you.